Hey guys, welcome to today's class. Have fun.
Good afternoon, students. My name is Ms. Brown, and you're welcome to another English class. Remember, during the last class, we talked about all aspects of English on which you'll be tested during your WAEC examination, and we talked about the aspect of creative writing, and we discussed some loopholes that cause students to get bad grades in their creative writing. And I promise that in today's class we're going to be talking about how to write the descriptive essays. So let's get right to it. What do you understand by descriptive essays? By the title, you can already tell from the word that it means to describe or to provide information. So when you're writing descriptively, you are basing your essay on facts about the person, the place, the object, or whatever it is you're describing, and you're also using detailed observations, and you try as much as possible to be extensively descriptive. This means that you need to use a lot of adjectives and a lot of adverbs to describe. So the first part of the slide tells us that a great descriptive essay informs the reader not only through facts and statistics, but by using detailed observations and descriptions. Remember, in the last video I told you that we shouldn't fall into the loophole of using false statistics. So we have to be sure that whatever statistic we provide or present in our essay is accurate, so we don't get faulted for providing wrong information. When you get an essay, when you're asked to write an essay that is descriptive, first you have to observe what it is you're describing. Are you describing a person? Is it a place, a memory, an experience, or an object? These are usually what descriptive essays will ask you to focus on. And when you understand what it is you're asked to describe, it will help you keep track of your writing. Some persons have been asked to describe an event that involved a person, and instead of describing the event, they went ahead to describe the person or the person's action. You shouldn't do that. Some have been asked to describe a memory, and instead of describing a memory, they describe the event surrounding a person who was, they just lose focus of what they were asked to describe. So you have to always ask yourself, am I describing what I have been asked to describe? Am I straying too far from the topic? It's true that you may need to look away from the subject of your description for some inspiration to write, but you must always ensure that the topic of your description stays the topic of your description. You're not describing the person's fashion sense alone when you're asked to describe the person. You must make sure that everything and every part aspect of the person, the memory, the experience is adequately described so that nothing suffers. So the next thing you have to figure out is, why are you writing your descriptive essay? It is good to observe and just creatively analyze things from time to time. Sometimes we do this for fun, but when you're writing a descriptive essay, you need to have a particular reason for writing. Are you writing to persuade your readers to believe that a certain experience is good, or are you writing to inform them? You need to know what you're writing. This will help you keep your focus on the subject, and you'll be able to tailor your language to fit your reason for writing. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's see how the let's see what the example says. Imagine that you want to write a descriptive essay about your grandfather. You have chosen to write about your grandfather's physical appearance and the way that he interacts with people. However, rather than providing a general description of these aspects, you want to convey your admiration for his strength and kindness. This is your reason for writing the descriptive essay. To achieve this, you might focus one of your paragraphs on describing the roughness of his hands, roughness resulting from the labor of his work throughout his life, but you might also describe how he would hold your hand so gently with his rough hands when having a conversation with you or when taking a walk. I think that this example adequately shows how people's reasons for writing may be different. Some people may be writing just to give a physical appearance of the subject. Many policemen and police officers do this. When they're asked to write reports, they're asked to give factual information, maybe about a certain person who they arrested or about an action. In this case, they're not trying to get you involved emotionally with the person, so theirs is strictly business. But when you're asked to write about a person like your grandfather or your mother, you may want to portray the person in a more emotional light and get people to connect with the person's character, not just what the person looks like. So you need to know, am I writing, is this a business report I'm doing? Am I to be formal, or am I allowed to use emotive language? By emotive language, I mean language that is based, that is aimed at inspiring emotions in the hearts of your listeners. So you really need to decide why you're writing. Now, during the WAEC examinations, if you're asked to describe a person, you're most likely going to be required to have an emotional angle to it. But if you're asked to describe an object, you're asked to go straight to the point, as businesslike as possible, just like a doctor and a patient. Okay, now one more thing you should remember as you write a descriptive essay is that you should show your readers, don't just tell them. Now look at the two examples in the slide. I grew tired after dinner. That is one expression that explains to the reader that the writer felt tired. And then there's a second example that says, as I leaned back and rested my head against the top of the chair, my eyelids began to feel heavy, and the edges of the empty plate in front of me blurred with the tablecloth. At this point, the reader doesn't even need you to tell him or her that you are tired. He can see from your description the exhaustion taking over you. That is why it's called a descriptive writing. You don't just tell the person. You must describe and make the person believe what you have written. You don't just say, I was hungry. What were the signs that you were hungry? Did you feel a pain in your belly? Did you feel lightheaded? You have to describe. In the last class, we talked about how to create content. Now, the two examples basically convey the same information, but the first one is very short and not as informative as the second one. You want to aim to write like the second writer, provide more information, and let the reader conclude on their own what it is that you're feeling. Let them draw the conclusions themselves. Give them enough information to decide. Don't just tell them what it is. Show them what it is using your words. Notice that this writer uses a lot of adjectives and adverbs in showing us how he felt. So, if you are an examiner, which would you choose, the first writer or the second? I would gravitate towards the second writer because he's definitely more informative than the first. Let's move on to the next slide and see what that has for us. You must focus on the 5 senses when you write. You must focus on the sense of sight. You can ask yourself, what does this sound like? What does the person sound like? What does the object sound like? Or how does the experience sound? Yes, experiences can have sounds too. You also have to focus on sight. What does it look like? What does it look like? You have to focus on smell. How does it smell? These are the senses that would help you create content for whatever it is you're writing. The sense of touch, is it smooth? Is it rough? What does it feel like? And then the sense of taste. This especially comes into play when you're describing maybe a meal or a drug or anything else that has to go into your mouth. So when you focus on the 5 senses, you'll be able to provide vivid and specific details that show your readers that you can show them rather than tell them what you're describing. So whenever you describe, remember the 5 senses: the sight, the sound, the smell, the touch, and the taste. When I teach younger children, I tell them to ask themselves questions like, what does it look like? What does every part of it look like? That will help you to answer the question of sight. What does it sound like? There's so many onomatopoeic words that will help you describe sounds. We have the one for the car, we have the one for the animals. There's so many of them. You should look them up from time to time. What does it smell like? There's so many words. Does it smell putrid? Does it smell nice? What does it feel like? When you touch it, how does it feel? Is it soft? Is it hard? Is it smooth or rough? And then the taste. Does it have a good taste or a bad taste? When you're able to analyze all of the five senses in regards to whatever your subject is, you would be able to give a very fantastic descriptive essay. Now let's go over to quick tips for writing your descriptive essay. Keep these in mind. You must plan your essay. That simply means that you must come up with an outline for your essay. The outline for your essay is a short note that you make about what you want each paragraph to hold, and you also need to gather information about who or what you want to describe, so that you're able to keep track of what you've written. You don't repeat information, they're not verbose, and you are easy to understand. There's nothing that can work without a plan, including writing. If you have no plan, you find yourself repeating unnecessary information, or you find that you bore your readers rather, or you find that your readers find your style of writing to be monotonous. That means never changing. So you must plan. Planning, taking the 1, 2, sometimes 3 to 5 minutes to plan your essay can be very rewarding. It will help you to work faster. Some people do not believe this, but planning your essay actually helps you to work faster. So here are the 3 tips you must follow. You must plan, you must draft, and you must revise your essay. Always ask yourself, why am I writing this essay? What are the particular qualities of this person, the object, the place that I want to focus on? When you decide what the particular qualities you want to focus on are, you have a cohesive work. Now let's go over to drafting your descriptive essay. Like we said before, what sight, sound, smell, taste, and textures are important for developing your description? Which details can you include to ensure that your readers gain a vivid impression imbued with your emotion or perspective? These 2 points actively inform us on what we need to do. Let's assume that you have to describe the fan in your living room. You know that as senior students you're required to write nothing less than 250 words. So if you have to describe the fan in the living room, what information do you think would be necessary? As a student, I would definitely think that the physical appearance of the fan is very important, so I'm going to write that down. I'm also going to talk about how the physical appearance of the fan makes it either a good fan or a bad one. I'm going to talk about what makes the fan unique. Is there a particular marking on the fan that makes it unique? I'm going to talk about the fan in relation to the company that produced it. Do they have a particular style of design that is known worldwide? Do they have a unique style of presenting their equipment? I'm going to talk about the fan in relation to its function. How does it work? Is it effective? Is it not? Is there anything I'd like to change about the fan? How often does it take to clean? How often do you clean the fan? What does maintaining the fan require? By the time we go through these questions, I can assure you that you'd have gone over 250 words. There are always questions to ask about whatever you've been asked to describe. And don't forget to start with a title. You must have a title. You must have your introduction. Remember that you can start your introduction with a short story. You can start your introduction with a statistic, maybe about fans, with an anecdote, which is a short story I talked about before, a statistic, or a general statement that would help your readers connect with your essay. So remember your title, remember to ask as many questions and provide answers to the questions. Imagine that you're trying to describe the essay to the fan to a child. Children are very, very inquisitive. I'm sure you know this because you're children yourself. So what questions will this child ask you, and how would you best describe the fan to the child so that the child can understand? Remember that you're making sure that remember to make sure that your essay can be understood by anybody and everybody who picks it up to read. When you've been able to achieve that, then I can say that you have become an excellent writer. Revising your descriptive essay. Now, when you're done writing, I always say, go through your work. Check yourself. What have I done? Is it good enough? Here are some questions that can help you check what you have written and see where you may be lacking to make improvements in. Have you provided enough details and descriptions to enable your readers gain a complete and vivid perception? This simply means, have I provided enough detail for somebody to recognize what I'm talking about if they eventually see it? Is there any minor details that you have left out? Sometimes we may chalk up some details in our mind to be minor and unimportant. But I tell you that to create content and to make sure that what you have written is recognizable, you must make sure that you present every information, whether minor or important to you. Have you used words that convey your emotions or perspective? Did you just describe your grandfather as a hardworking man? Did you try to get your readers to connect emotionally to the fact that he is a hardworking man? Remember the example we had talked about how his hands were rough from working so hard to provide for his family and all of that. So you want to explore the emotional angle of every essay you write. There is always emotion attached to whatever you say. Even in court, when lawyers have opening and closing statements, sometimes even between arguments, they try to appeal to the emotions of the jury so that they can sway them to make a decision that they really want to happen. So always go to the emotional aspect of things and try as much as you can to get us to relate to that. Are there any unnecessary details in your description? As I said before, your examiner would not be appreciative of unnecessarily long-winding sentences or information that would not be important. So even as you are striving to create content, you must make sure that there's a balance. You're not talking about the football pitch when you've been asked to describe the football itself. You have to learn to have a limit. And one way you can learn this is by reading a lot. If you're not in the habit of reading, you're most likely not going to be a fantastic writer. Everybody who loves to read, not necessarily everybody, but most people who love to read can and have over time developed the ability to write fantastic descriptive essays. So you have to improve on your reading skills so that you'd be able to learn this balance and know where to stop and how far to go. Does each paragraph of your essay focus on one aspect of your description? One mistake we talked about last week was how many people do not know how to paragraph. You cannot have 2, 3, 4 ideas in one paragraph. Each paragraph must have one idea. Remember that the paragraph has a topic sentence and then you build the rest of the paragraph on that topic sentence. So treat one idea or one aspect of your essay in every paragraph. Do not be tempted to go into two aspects of your essay, to presenting two aspects of your essay in one paragraph. Make sure that you're presenting one. Don't worry about the space that you have to write. You should be able to present a well-structured essay from start to finish. Are your paragraphs ordered in the most effective way? Remember we talked about chronological order. Everything has to come in order of importance. If you go back to the 5 senses that we talked about, you see them outlined in order of importance from the look to the touch to the smell. Make sure that you're following that order so that you don't confuse your listeners, or your readers rather. You cannot be talking about a woman and then you describe everything about her, where she's from, what she looks like, without telling us her name. And towards the end of the essay, you remember that you haven't said her name, and then you put it there. You've modeled up your essay, so make sure that you are writing in chronological order. That is where planning the essay will really help you. And You must make sure that your sentences are paragraphed correctly, you have capital letters in the right spot, and then you must check that you are above the 250 word word mark. So I told you already how to count. You do not count 2-letter words. You do not count 3-letter words that are grammatical words. By grammatical words, I mean words like R, A-R-E, I-T apostrophe S. Those are grammatical words, but if they're nouns, if they're verbs, you can count them. So this way, you make sure that you have all your bases covered. And most importantly, check your handwriting, that it is acceptable, it is legible, and it is beautiful. In the next class, we're going to talk about expository essays. So in the meantime, I leave you with an assignment. Write an essay describing a skill you want to acquire in the future. I want you to give it your best shot. Try using all the tips from the slide that has been presented for you, and I'm sure you do a good job. I may not be able to assess you, so if you have an older person around you, you can read it to the person or make a recording of yourself reading it and then listen to it. That way you'll be able to point out errors that you couldn't have pointed out by merely reading it to yourself. I hope you have a good day, stay safe, and enjoy.
I hope the class was interesting. If you have questions, please drop them in the comment section or send us an email. We will love to help you further. See you in the next class.